for today's show as we delve into Workbook Lesson 36. So, as always, a huge shout out to all of you here on Enlightened World Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I know there have been a number of you that have tuned in routinely, and I really appreciate that. I hope that as you go through your own study and practice of A Course in Miracles, especially if you're going along in the workbook with us or on your own, I hope that you're finding this to be a beautiful, life-changing experience. If you're not so far, there's nothing wrong with that, because this entire thought system aims to reverse the way we look at everything, including the world that we live in. And if something, frankly, doesn't challenge your deepest held assumptions about life, then what are we doing? If something doesn't challenge everything that you now believe, then eventually, whether it's in this lifetime or the next or the one after that, doesn't matter if you believe in that sort of thing or not. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you will decide in favor of love instead of the ego. You will, in other words, stop playing it small in life. That's really what we're doing when we side with the ego. It's like we have amnesia, and then we don't, yet we still choose to go back to the old way of being. The fact that you're watching this live stream right now indicates to me that you're done with that old way of being. So, taking that as our guide for today, let's delve into this particular workbook lesson because it brings up a lot. It brings up a lot, especially if you were raised in the West, as I was, as most of us were here. You know, if you were raised in an Eastern spiritual tradition, it's going to look a little bit different for you. But in my lifetime, I've been told in many different ways and in many different forms and tones of voice, I have to add, that I'm a sinner, right? That we're all sinners. So let's break that down today, because it simply isn't true. If you look at the title of today's live, I've put some little nuggets in there for your consideration. And what I hope is that whether you agree with what I have to say in the next few minutes or not, that's okay with me if you don't, honestly, because I hope that you take it to heart. And if you begin to think about it, even for 1 second, I will have succeeded in what I'm doing today. Lesson 36 reads, "My holiness envelops everything I see." Yesterday, we looked at ourselves as the perceiver. Today, we're expanding that to look at everything that we see in the world. And simply, as always, applying the day's idea, whether you believe it or not. So the action is in the very first paragraph. If you have this and you're following along live, or whether you're catching the replay, it says that you're holy because your mind is part of God's. All right, that was lesson 35 that we looked at in yesterday's live stream. Our minds are holy because they're a part of God's. They've never been separated. Never been separate from. There is no separation of any kind. Whether you believe that or not does not matter. Just let that idea sit in your mind. And it would be very fun and very cool of you to play around with that a little bit. There is no separation of any kind. period. None. Obviously, we're having a different experience here in the world, and that's okay. In our world of separation, we seem to be cut off from love. We have it for bursts of time. We might be in a loving relationship. You might be married to a beautiful partner, and you have what other people would consider a dream relationship. That could be. Yet, as long as we still retain even one shred of separation, we see ourselves as separate. Quite literally, it's all or nothing. Sinless is referred to here. This workbook lesson refers to sinless as without sin, so it brings up the word sin. There isn't any sin, right? And it is all or nothing. Either you are sinless or you are not. All right, so we're told here, I was told, I'll use myself as an example, I'll even name the church, Hoffmantown Baptist Church. Yes, Albuquerque, New Mexico, growing up. Yeah, so this is where some of the artwork comes from, right? From New Mexico, the rug behind me. Yeah, in that church, I was fed, and I prefer to call it force fed, the message that we're all sinners, worthy of punishment. By nature, we are sinners, 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 sinner. Repeated. It's a repeated inculcation, isn't it? You may have had the exact same thing growing up. Now, my question is, did that resonate with you? Does it now? It did not resonate with me. So the deal is that, and this is something that A Course in Miracles confirmed for me, perhaps it confirms this for you, is that we're not sinners. In fact, there's nothing wrong with us deep down. We are not broken. You are not broken. Start with that as a premise. Whatever your spiritual practice looks like, whether you are actively working with A Course in Miracles or not, start with that as the premise that you are not fundamentally broken. You are not fundamentally flawed. You are not a sinner worthy of punishment and death. Right? Like God's going to strike you down with a thunderbolt from on high. You'll be stricken blind and sick. Why? Because you transgressed against God. No, you're not broken. And ultimately, there is no such thing as sin. It is not real. It's not real. How can I say that? Well, God is love, correct? God has no ego to be offended. If there is no sense of separation at all, if there is no separation, period, how can one transgress another when we're all one? There is no ego to be offended. See, the belief in sin goes right along with our convenient fiction about being separate from each other, because one person offends another. We get offended. We take offense when someone does something that we perceive to be against us. There are millions of examples, right? That's not even open for debate, the way we habitually react to these things. Now, something like A Course in Miracles and the workbook for students is designed to take us deeper, what's under the surface, and that is fear. We're simply seeing each other as separate because we ourselves are afraid. We feel guilty. We're identifying with the ego. God has no ego. God is not separate. There is no separation at any kind. So whether you choose to call the life force itself, love, the universe, God, whether that term resonates with you or not, actually does not make any difference. You may use whatever term that you wish for a power that is not your ego. The ego has no power, has only the power that we choose to give it. Choosing to give it, we can then withdraw it. So, are you making that decision to withdraw your allegiance, your belief in, your identification with the ego? To the extent that you are, you will find a world opening up for you. It will be, to an outside observer, the same world that you saw yesterday. You will see the same trees in the park across the street. You'll be looking up at the same stars at night, the same moon during the day. You'll see the same blue sky or clouds, maybe a mixture of both. Things will outwardly appear the same. What has changed is your inner world. And when your inner world changes, you'll begin to see things differently on the outside. It is completely an inside job. And I hope that today's lesson, as you go forth with this and practice this, drives home the reality that there is no sin. God has no ego to be offended. I know that you were likely not told that in church growing up. I was certainly not fed that truth in Sunday school. Now, if I had been, it would have been a tremendous relief to me. Now, I was not meant to hear this at that time. Yes, this was the 1980s that we're talking about in terms of this timeline and this time frame. And well, I was in high school, so I was in middle school and high school at the time. I was not meant to open up A Course in Miracles yet. In fact, that didn't happen until 2013. So everything happens when the timing is right to happen. But if you have ever resisted the notion that you're a sinner and thought, you know what, this really doesn't feel right to me. This can't be right. How can perfect love want to get revenge and punish and be jealous? Really? How is perfect love jealous? Because somebody wrote it 2,000 years ago and edited it, and another church conference edited this and took out this and substituted that, for example. If that doesn't resonate with you, you're not alone. You're not alone, and you are 100% absolutely meant to be here watching this video right now. So I hope that you are able to feel the power of this for what it is. That is my hope for you, is that you're able to feel this. And even if this doesn't quite sit with you, that you take the time to resonate on it. And I know you are. So my work is done here for today. This is a daily live stream, and I do take questions and comments. So let me bring these up here today. And, the practice periods today, what we do is we look around and say, my holiness envelops this computer screen. All right, my holiness envelops these paintings. My holiness envelops this cell phone, right? My holiness envelops this body. And just proceed in that way. My holiness envelops everything I see. So let's see who's tuning in here live today. I've got a couple of people. Yes, Deirdre and Robert, hello, how are you? Yeah, and so Deirdre writes that religion puts human attributes onto God. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, that didn't make sense to me. I used to look at lots of church pamphlets, and there were, this was at the Baptist church, where they had pictorial Bibles and little devotionals and books and literature that had kind of almost cartoonish pictures in them. To me, it was always a little bit weird. It's kind of like the literature that certain religious groups put, at your door, right? If people are proselytizing from whatever tradition they're in, right? If they're proselytizing door to door and going door to door with pamphlets and leaflets and literature, often they have a pictorial image of God as a white man with a beard. Right? It's totally anthropomorphic. Why we think we're here running around in these bodies, so we want to project God as a body, as an all-powerful dude in the sky with thunderbolts ready to cut us down for transgressing, right? For swearing or something like that. Yeah, I mean, does that really make sense? Yeah, puts human attributes onto God. Well, God's not a human being. Right? Love is not a human being. Love is not contained by this form that we call human. And we could have called ourselves something else, right? Language is only a term, and yeah, religion tends to do that, doesn't it? Puts human attributes onto what is not human in nature. Yeah, doesn't make sense. It never made sense to me. Like, not at all. Not at all. So, yeah, hopefully, if you're catching the replay of this, I really, again, offer this just period point blank as something for you to consider, right? If a spiritual tradition doesn't lead us to question the very foundations of everything, and I do mean everything that we now believe, is that worth it to you? You may answer yes. You may answer yes to something that plays it safe, plays it small, because that is what a lot of traditions out there are like. And I don't have to name names of those. You likely have encountered and even practiced some of these techniques that leave the ego 100% intact rather than shine it away. Now we have a choice. We have a choice. We always do. And my hope is that you choose to take this material to heart. It's a beautiful, beautiful message. And if it doesn't sit well with the ego, so be it. It's not supposed to. So, that said, if I can be of any assistance to you on your journey, please feel free to reach out to me. You're more than welcome to send me a private message on Facebook. You're more than welcome to comment here in the comment thread, like Enlightened World Network's Facebook page, and visit their YouTube channel, Enlightened World Network, where all of these live streams are archived every day. So you can go back and look and watch. And if you're curious about a certain workbook lesson or an idea that you're working with, feel welcome to go back and watch that video. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm here to be a resource for you. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and every day. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you all again here tomorrow.